Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 2019 Waterhackweek seminar series. This series will consist of 8 seminars and be presented by the Waterhackweek cyber training PIs. Each week will focus on a specific water-related use case, tool, or library. The topics will consist of introductory and advanced concepts that are relevant to a wide range of water and informatics use cases, which will be relevant to participants of the Waterhackweek and those that will not be joining us as well. Some examples of topics that will be covered are publishing large data sets, running numerical models, organizing collaborative research projects, and meeting journal requirements by following standards. Again, this seminar series is meant to prepare participants for the Waterhackweek event, but these topics are wide-ranging and will be applicable to studies beyond Waterhackweek. So we're really happy that everybody's here joining us. Today we have Danielle Tijerina, who is a hydrologist at CUAHSI, and she'll be talking to us about a free and open source platform that CUAHSI is developing called Hydroshare, which is designed to enable discovery, collaboration, and publishing of hydrologic science. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to type them into the chat window, and we will address them when we have a break. And I think that's it for introductions. So Danielle, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Tony. That was a great introduction. And as Tony said, I'm Danielle. I'm a hydrologist at CUAHSI, and I am here to talk about Hydroshare and some open source tools that we're providing for data sharing. And so the main purpose of this webinar is basically to focus on the Hydroshare platform, which is a framework that supports collaboration, data sharing, publication, and data management needs for the broader hydrologic community. And so just to quickly overview the flow of the webinar, first we'll talk about what is CUAHSI, because I'm not sure everyone listening in is familiar. And then why are we here, kind of understanding some of the data management background and why this work is important, and then looking at what is Hydroshare and why is it so useful. Then we'll go into a Hydroshare workflow and a demo of this workflow, and then some questions and discussion at the end. And so like Tony said, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and either save them or type them into the chat, and then we will discuss everything at the end. And so what is CUAHSI? We are a nonprofit with over 130 member institutions, and our overall mission is to advance and shape the future of hydrologic sciences. And so within the CUAHSI structure, we accomplish this with 2 major activities, our community services and data services. So community services are things like trainings, grants, workshops, cyberseminars, and then data services are really the focus of what we're talking about today. And so these are really wide-ranging, but we basically help people and try to provide access to information and data that might not be readily available or easily accessible. And so one of these is Hydroshare, and allowing people to share and discover and analyze models and publish and find all sorts of different kind of types of water data. We try and do this in a collaborative environment using free and open source software. So we'll go into a little bit of background. So why should we care about data services and these kind of tools to manage our water data? So typically, data management plans are required by most funders. So for instance, the National Science Foundation requires that a proposal has a data management plan, and they include 5 essential components. And proposals that don't include a data management plan will be returned without review. So this is similar to the idea of the FAIR research principles, in that data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And so we're kind of seeing this as a increasing trend, and it's really bigger than just funding. Now even some journals are requiring that these practices are followed, even just to submit papers. So Additionally, we're also finding that there's an increased need to publish data along with papers and helping science become more reproducible. And so a common outcome of successful data management and these data management plans is increased collaboration. And so it's easier for you to share your data, and really in the big picture leads to that reproducible science. And so when we consider how to create these data management plans, we really have to think about the entire data management lifecycle. So what is the approach to managing the flow of a project's data throughout its lifecycle? So from creation and initial storage to the time when the data is archived and published. And so this is basically how do you handle your data from beginning to the end of your project. And so one example of this is from the University of California, Santa Cruz University Library that came up with this figure. So if you kind of start here where you have your research question, and then you move around throughout the cycle, and so looking at data search and reuse, and so seeing what other people have done, your data management plan, describing your data with metadata and all the collection and analysis that goes into that, archiving your data, and then finally publishing that. And so a huge part of this is, like we said, that data management plan. And so this is basically documenting your entire management lifecycle. And so it provides details on collection, storage, processing, analysis, findability, and all of those kind of things. So this really helps ensure reproducibility, and it also allows others to discover your data. And a big portion of this too, or something to think about, is that this is something that should start before your research begins. So for instance, for Waterhackweek, this might be something that you plan out with your group before you even start your research project. And so we are looking at how Hydroshare can support all these kind of data needs for the water science community, and also in the long term, how these can fulfill your data management plan. And so generally, Hydroshare is a repository for hydrologic data, models, and also tools where you can share and collaborate. You can discover and find other people's data. And then also you can visualize hydrologic data with some of the integrated web apps that we have. And so if we were to sum up the main goals of Hydroshare, they're basically to provide users with an open source framework for collaboration, finding and leveraging data, and then archiving and disseminating all sorts of types of water data. And so in the context of Waterhackweek, Hydroshare, and we'll go into all of this in a little bit more detail, but basically you can, with your group, discover data. You can manage your group's data. It's a great place to it's a great collaboration space, so you can share data within your own group. And then once you're finished with your project, you can store and archive your data that you created, and then even publish your project and receive a DOI. So if you have an associated paper, you can include that DOI, for example. So just some Hydroshare fun facts. Each user is allocated 20 gigs of space. And this is just an initial allocation, but you can always request more if you're working with larger data sets. We also have special archives like National Water Model, and then a bunch of information on Hurricane Harvey, Maria, and Irma. And then we also have over 40 terabytes of publicly available data. So if you're thinking about a way to start your research and kind of see what other people have done, it's a great place to discover data. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but of course, if you need help, you can always email help@CUAHSI.org. So how does it work? This is the basic Hydroshare workflow. So first, you're going to create your data, then upload your data to Hydroshare, describe it with metadata, share with colleagues, and then you have the option to permanently publish. And so this is the process that we'll be demoing today. And you can see at the bottom, we have the Hydroshare link. And so if you go to that website, you're able to kind of see, if you did want to follow along with the demo, you could do that. So first things first, we have to sign up with for a Hydroshare account. This is pretty straightforward, but one of the cool things is you can add your organization. So if you want to be associated with an organization, it helps people find you. And so we'll go ahead and start with the first step in our workflow. And so that is creating data. So this is any kind of water data that you've created or collected in your research. And the really cool thing about Hydroshare is that you don't have to have a specific type of data. And actually all the shared content in Hydroshare is really diverse. And these are just some examples of the kinds of data that you can have. So a lot of people think of time series and of course like geospatial features. We also include things like net CDFs and even model instances. So, and also another cool aspect is that you can have a combination of multiple types of data in one data set. And so this is really the second part of the workflow, and we will upload to Hydroshare. So once we've created our data, we can upload it and then describe it with metadata. And so this is where we will start our demo. So just to note really quick, this is a really high-level overview of the basic workflow. And there's a lot more that you can accomplish with Hydroshare that I won't share with you today, but there's information on the website that you can read and get more information on. So we'll go ahead, and this is the Hydroshare landing page. And so you can see here you have some tabs at the top, and we'll go through kind of what each of those tabs does. But our initial goal is to take the data that we have created and we're going to upload it onto Hydroshare. So we're going to start by going to My Resources. So once you click that, just go to this open tab. So this is basically a library of all of your data sets that you have either uploaded. If you go over here, you can see all of the data sets that have been shared with you or things that you have saved. So you can kind of think of it similar to a Google Docs. And just to be clear with some of the nomenclature, when we talk about resources, we're basically talking about a data set. So data or models and the associated metadata. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and create a new resource. And so this will take you to this page where you are able to make a new resource. So we're going to go ahead and title this webinar. Let's do webinar dataset 2. I think we already have one. And so you'll go ahead and input a title, and then uploading your information is as easy as dragging and dropping. So I have a couple of data sets here. One is a geographic raster, one is a point shapefile, and then one is a Jupyter notebook. So you can go ahead and just drag and drop those. We'll go ahead and drag and drop the point and the Jupyter notebook. So notice we have multiple different kinds of data, and so we're going to go ahead and create this resource. And here we have, all these data, and what will happen is they'll be in one resource or data set. So I've already created this resource, so I'm going to go actually over here, and this is basically what you will get when you have successfully created your resource. And so this is what it looks like. Actually, we're going to go back. Sorry, one moment. Okay, so this is our resource. So we have webinar demo dataset, and you can see up here we have a little notification that says the following metadata are still required to publish the resource and make it available so people can discover it. And so the things that we need to add are an abstract and keywords. And so this goes back to our third step in the workflow, describing with metadata. So what we're going to go ahead and do, there's a few options right here, but we're going to go on this pencil, which is edit this resource. And so when we edit this resource, this allows us to go in and add certain things. So if we want to copy and paste an abstract here, this is an abstract, and about Waterhackweek, okay? And so the more descriptive you can make this, the better. And it's really important to describe the data set in the abstract and these associated keywords right down here as completely as possible, because the better that you describe it, the more likely it will be discoverable by others. So once we have filled out this abstract, we'll go ahead and save the changes here. And then let's go ahead and add some keywords. So awesome data set, awesome data, and maybe we'll do, this data set is in Utah, so let's do Utah. And you can add, like I said, as many keywords as you think describes the data. And so we have added those, and then once we have done that, you can go ahead and move on down the page. And so this is the how to cite, and I will get to that when we talk about publishing. So let's move down to coverage. So since this data is spatial in nature, part of it, then we have a map that's associated with it. So this is pretty cool because you can actually go in and change the map. So if I decided I wanted the entire area of Logan, Utah, then I can go ahead and select that entire thing and then save the changes here. If I decided that that was too large of an area and I wanted to set the spatial coverage the way that the content files describe it, so the way that my raster would describe this, I can click this and it will go back, and so this is basically what that raster would be covering. Additionally, you can set temporal coverage, and so if your data is associated with a certain date, you can go ahead and put that in there. So then we get down to our content. So this is where we can start adding metadata that's associated with each specific type of data within our larger data set. And so if we click on one of these, you can go ahead and actually, if you hover, usually a little pop-up will come up and it will describe what this data is doing or what it is. So let's move down a little bit, and you can see down here we have an area where we're able to enter in more metadata. So this first tab is the authorship. So this is a place where you can add authors, contributors. So let's say you're working on in your group, you can add another author here. It can be someone who is an existing Hydroshare user or someone outside. And that's really a great tool, because then you can make sure that everyone gets credit for the work. And then we're going to go ahead and go over to this content metadata, which is probably the most important tab over here. And so right now we are, we have selected up here our Logan geographic raster file. And this, once you have selected your content metadata tab, you can change things like the title of the metadata or of the actual file. You can add keywords that are associated with that particular file. And one important thing to note too is that if it is a certain kind of recognized resource type or data type, then what happens is Hydroshare actually recognizes some of the metadata and will populate these metadata areas for you. So if you look down here in the spatial coverage, I didn't have to enter any of these things in. Hydroshare already did all of that for me. So the geographic reference, the spatial coordinate system, and lots of other interesting information. So you can look at the same with the outlet, which is our point feature. So again, here you can change the title, add keywords, and some of the metadata has been populated for us. If we look at something like the Jupyter Notebook, which actually I'm going to go to this one because it seems like it's. So typically this is kind of a bug that I'm running into with this particular file. For some reason, it's not letting me enter in, so enter in the metadata. So if we are on the same one, if we go to the Jupyter Notebook, then we can go down here to the content metadata, and you can see that because it's a Jupyter Notebook and not a geographic feature, it doesn't populate the same as the geographic features did. So what you can do then is you can add some extended metadata. So let's say I wanted to put in a description, and then you can add some values here. So now you have added in some new metadata, and so that just gives somebody who might find your data set a little bit more information. Another thing you could include in here is maybe the version or like anything about the resource that you have. So that's basically it as far as adding metadata. And so once you're all done with that, you want to go back to this little button right here, which is View Resource. So this will take you back to what the resource looks like when somebody might see it when they're searching for it. So you can see here that, so you can see here that we have some of our keywords, and actually we'll go back to this one. This is the original data set that we created in this demo. And so you can go here, and we have our awesome data, keywords, Utah. This is a really short abstract, so you probably want to add more. So we have uploaded and described our data, and the next thing that we probably want to do, we go back to our workflow. So we have created it, we have uploaded the data, we've described it, and now we want to share it with our colleagues. So if we go back to our data set, if we hover over this little person button, this manages who has access. So right now, I am the only person who can, this data is shared with. So you'll notice also this thing right here says quota holder. That's important because, like I said earlier, with the 20 gigabytes of data that is available to you, this will mean that however big this data set is will be under my quota. So if I want to add a user to share this data set with, I can go over here to the user button, and then let's maybe search. I'll add Tony. Anthony Castronova from CUAHSI. Okay, and so he's there, and he's already in Hydroshare, so it's easy to share with him. So once I find him there, then I can change the level of control that he has. So maybe I'm worried that he might do something crazy with this data set, so I'm only going to let him view it. Or maybe I really want him to have total control, so I'm going to say he's an owner. So I'll go ahead and add him. I can change that later on if things, let's say he wasn't on the project anymore. And so he can do that. And then you can also change the status of the level of control once the data has already been shared with him. And so another thing that you probably would want to do is share it with a group. And so first of all, let's discuss what is a group. So if you go to the Hydroshare landing page, you'll see, so we are mostly working in My Resources. We're going to actually go to Collaborate. So once we click Collaborate, we land on this groups page. And so basically, groups are a way that you're able to work with other people who are on Hydroshare and share data and other information. And so, for instance, we can look at the National Water Center Summer Institute program. And so here we have a group that has been created, and so there's 31 members. And so you can see here, there's a description of what the group is and does. There's an overview of recent activities. These are all of the resources that have been shared within this group, and so it's a great way for you to share with certain people. And then here you can see all of the members, and since I'm an owner, I can invite people. Similarly, if we just go back real quick, there were some students within the National Water Center Summer Institute who wanted to create their own group, and so they did that here. So I'm not a part of this, but if I wanted to, I could ask to join by pressing this button down here. But this is a smaller group, and this could be something that perhaps your Waterhackweek group does. So speaking of Waterhackweek, let's check out and see there's already, I've created a Waterhackweek 2019 group. So once you have joined Hydroshare, if you are a participant in Waterhackweek, you can go ahead and request to join this group. So how does that relate to sharing our data? So if we go back to where we were managing access and sharing our data with people, once you're on this group tab selected, we can go ahead and type in keyword, and you'll go ahead and find Waterhackweek 2019. And so since this data is in edit mode, really I'm going to go ahead and it's like brand new data, so I'm going to go ahead and say that everyone in Waterhackweek can edit, and I'm going to go ahead and add that. So you can see over here, we have added everyone, so let's close that out. Let's go back to our Waterhackweek group, and you can see in here that I have shared a resource. And so this is the resource that I just shared within the group, and now it's here. So it's a great way to easily find and share data. All right, so now let's say we have finished our research project, and we've decided that we want to permanently publish our resource. And so why would you want to do this? Publishing it makes it citable. And again, now some like journal articles and papers will require this. And so this also gives you a DOI that you can use for your data. So if we go back to our resource, first thing you want to do is look over here at this how to cite. And so you can see here for the webinar demo data set that we just created, this is the citation that someone can use. And then underneath it says, when permanently published, this resource will have a formal digital object identifier. And so this will be your DOI, and this will be how someone would access it once it's published. So one of the big things you have to remember is that you cannot publish your data unless it is public. So we're going to go ahead and make our data public. And when that happens, it can be viewed and downloaded by anyone. And additionally, a little globe up here pops up that says publish this resource. And so I'm not going to do this now because this is a permanent action, and once you do it, you can no longer make changes. So that's something that's really important to note, that once you publish a data set on Hydroshare, it is permanent and you can no longer make changes. So this would be something that you would do, let's say, once you have written a paper and you need to publish all of the data associated with that paper, and you're not going to change any of the data, then that's a time when you would publish a resource. And so if you were to do that, and let's say you wanted to share a paper that was associated, you can go to the edit mode, And so this is a great way to link a published paper with your data on Hydroshare. So if you go down below your content, and then you can go to this related resources tab, and then here you can add sources, you can add relations, you can even add a funding agency. So there's lots of different things that you can do, and all these things help to make the resource more discoverable and just make sure you're providing as much information as possible. All right, so I demoed all of the basics of how a user would upload data, describe it with the metadata, and then share it, and also collaborate with the groups on Hydroshare. But there's a couple more things that Hydroshare can do that I think are pretty interesting and will probably be pretty relevant for you all. And so, again, going back to those tabs on the landing page, if you go to Discover, let's think back to the data management lifecycle. The first thing that you typically do is do a data search and data reuse. And so looking at this Discover tab, you're able to enter in keywords associated with whatever kind of data set you're looking for, and then you can find publicly available data sets that are already on Hydroshare. And so, for instance, here I wanted to look for a national water model data, and so I typed that in and was able to find there's actually 88 different data resources that are associated with that phrase. And so this goes back to all of the metadata that you added when you create your data set and you upload your data, then that is helping to make this discoverable. So again, the better you describe it, the easier people will be able to find it. Another aspect of Hydroshare are our apps library, and so these are basically tools that work with your data that's on Hydroshare. So it extends Hydroshare to allow you to use others' data in Hydroshare or access data that's not necessarily on Hydroshare. So one example is the National Water Model Forecast Viewer, which visualizes National Water Model output. And another example is some of the apps allow you to analyze your data. And this is something that Tony will be talking about next week on January 24th at the same time. So tune in if you would like to hear how to use the third-party applications that operate on data in Hydroshare. All right, so the last two tabs on our landing page are the Help and the About. And so like I said, I didn't show you everything that Hydroshare can do, but if you go to the About section, you can find out a lot more about the history of Hydroshare and some of the ways in which it can be utilized to its fullest. And then also, if you go to Help, you can see this page right here. So this Help page contains a huge amount of documentation on workflow and how to use Hydroshare, and will definitely help you solve some issues that you might run into. And then finally, of course, you can email us at help@CUAHSI.org if you're super stuck and need some help, and then our team here can help you via email. And so going back to this diagram of the data management lifecycle, just to kind of wrap up and think about what we've talked about today. So we see that Hydroshare really can aid the user in all of these aspects of the cycle, all the way from discovering data to storing it and then archiving and publishing. So for an activity like Waterhackweek, where the purpose is to use an open source technology to analyze water-related data sets, this portion may be of most value to you as far as using Hydroshare. And so this would, like we already have talked about, include planning your data management plan, storing, collaborating with your groups, adding the metadata, and even archiving it once you've finished. And so another step with that would be that Hydroshare can assist with is publication. And so that may not be something that you do during Waterhackweek, but if you continue to work on your project, you might be able to or decide to publish your work. And, it's really important to note that all the things that you've seen here today to do with Hydroshare are something that you can use in Waterhackweek and then beyond on other projects that you're currently working on or ones that you may start in the future. And so just to kind of sum up, what did we learn? So, of course, our data management plans are an integral part of any research project and really more and more are becoming mandatory for publishing papers and funding. Hydroshare can help with the entire data lifecycle process, and it can be used as a super effective collaboration tool in organizing your teams. And, remember, hydroshare.org has a bunch of other tools to help you, and of course, you can always get in touch with us here at CUAHSI. And just before we finish up, I'm going to have a shameless plug for a program that's super similar to Waterhackweek, and this is the National Water Center Summer Institute. And you can go to the website at CUAHSI.org, Education Summer Institute, and look at some more details. But basically, this is a program that's similar to Waterhackweek, but it's a 7-week-long program instead of 1 week. And you complete research to advance and improve the U.S. National Water Model, looking at things like computational methods, coastal modeling, and hydroinformatics. And applications need to be started by tomorrow, but if you need more time and are super interested, then you can email me and I might be able to work with you on the application deadline. And so with that, I'd just like to thank you all for participating and listening in, and remind you that this is the first of 8 talks that are associated with the Waterhackweek Cyberseminar series. So all of the talks will take place on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I'm just going to leave the date, speakers, and topics up while we go ahead and take some questions. So with that, thank you very much. And my contact information is at the bottom of the page.
Great. Thanks, Danielle. So if you have a question, please type it in either the chat or there's a questions menu in GoToWebinar. Some questions have come in, so I'm going to read them to Danielle. I've entered a couple answers. Well, I guess the first one I entered an answer to. So the first one is, will you receive a choice to assign geographic information even if you have not uploaded a spatially defined data set? And the answer is yes. It looks like there might be a little bit of a bug right now, but Danielle showed how you could add that metadata for a Jupyter notebook in her demo. Mm-hmm. And actually, I answered the second one as well. I'm really sorry, Danielle. I said, can you hand over the quota to another holder or owner? If you have multiple owners of a resource, such as when Danielle added myself as an owner, at the bottom of that page of her resource, there's actually a button to change the quota holder. So yes, you can do that. And it looks like Danielle is going to show us right now. Danielle, if you click on the edit button if you close this and click on the edit button for the resource.
Okay.
And scroll to the bottom, there should be a blue button. There we go, change quota holder. And that's a very important question if people are moving on from a project, or if you transfer ownership of the data to someone else, you may not want to be the quota holder anymore. So we have a couple more that I'll let Danielle field. The next one is, I believe this is there an integrated tool in Hydroshare to visualize stored data for others?
Actually, don't know the answer to that. Tony, do you want to field that?
So I think that'll be covered next week when we look at Hydroshare apps. So it may not be integrated directly in the website. There's rather a loose coupling, but we have web applications that will allow you to visualize certain types of data sets in your web browser. So I guess that's a partial answer to that question.
Yeah.
And it looked, yeah, so thanks, Paul. Paul says thank you for the resources you provided, Danielle. And we'll hang out for a few more minutes if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise we'll end early, but we'll hang out here and wait for some questions.
Yep, and yeah, thanks for your questions and your comment, Paul. And like I said, if you have any other questions, I would even just browse that help page on the Hydroshare website, because that people have worked really hard to document everything, and even putting together this presentation, I feel like I learned a lot just looking through those, so super useful.
Yeah, so this does conclude the talk. We will be hanging out on the line if anybody has any questions, but if you don't, feel free to drop off the line. Before or while we wait for questions, I do want to make an announcement that, like Danielle said, next week we'll be talking about Jupyter Notebooks. It's actually the same time and place for the next 7 weeks, 1 o'clock on Thursdays, and the schedule is right in front of you. So we look forward to seeing everyone tune into those seminars as well.
All right, well, if you do have any other questions that come up or you think about later, you can email me. My email is down there, dtijerina@CUAHSI.org. And you can also email Tony. He's easy to find on the CUAHSI website, or, of course, that help@CUAHSI.org. So.
Okay. Oh, one final question, it looks like, about general security of uploaded data. Can you speak a little bit to that, Danielle?
General security of uploaded data. That might be a tricky question.
It might be. So I'm wondering if maybe that refers to do we give away any of your information? So we don't give away any information of yours. So personal information is secure. Uploaded data is backed up at several locations. So if something were to happen, your data won't go missing. And CUAHSI is partially funded to make sure that these data sets live on in perpetuity. So that's another level of security in terms of you don't have to worry, or you shouldn't have to worry about your data disappearing in a year. When you publish it, we're really committing to making sure that that data is available forever as part of our mission. So it's not always, I mean, it's kind of a soft answer there, but we can't tell you definitively that nothing will ever happen to your data, but that's kind of one of our main purposes for existing. So it's something we take very seriously. Okay, so if there's no other questions, thanks everyone. Thank you, Danielle.
Yep, thank you.
See you all next week.